like to call on our local member, Phil Donato, to come and speak to us. We had the pleasure of Phil coming out and spending some time with us on Monday, and we appreciate that.
No worries, Dave. No worries. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Councillor Gosper, Councillor West and Councillor Hamling, welcome. I'm very honoured to be able to attend tonight's function, and my first function of this type, to celebrate this evening, and it's quite special that although he's not here at the moment, that we'll be hearing from the former Prime Minister, Mr Tony Abbott, later this evening, and I look forward to that. Look, I've only been in the job as the local member for approximately 6 months, and before that I was in the police force for 22 years, so I have some understanding of what happens in emergency services, and I can tell you from the very beginning that the Rural Fire Service is considered in high regard as equivalent to any of those other emergency services. The Rural Fire Service, specifically the Canobolas Rural Fire Service, as Mayor Gosper just indicated, covers a fairly significant area of approximately 13,000 square kilometres, which is just a little bit smaller than the footprint I cover in my electorate, which is about 17,000 square kilometres. But it's a sizable area with varying degrees of topography, vegetation and climates. And the challenges that provides and places upon emergency services, and specifically rural fire service or the fire combating services, is immense. And when I attended here on Monday, and I was shown around by both Dave and Brett, I was amazed by the level of technology of the command centre, which I saw in the room at the back there. And I've been in a few command centres over my time, and I can tell you that's probably one of the best command centres I've seen. So we're quite lucky and fortunate to have such a facility in our area of that degree. I think it's probably world class, and we should be very, very thankful for having that. And clearly, from what Mayor Gosper said in relation to the fires that occurred earlier this year and the catastrophic conditions and putting out those fires in such a swift manner, the level of resources here and the level of intellectual knowledge that both the Superintendent Dave and Brett share, along with the other volunteers, certainly helped in assisting, fighting and combating those fires. The Rural Fire Service covers approximately 95% of New South Wales and has been in existence for over 100 years. So I spoke to Mr Noble, Bob Noble, earlier from Yagara, and he told me he's been in the brigades for over 60 years. So, and I'm sure that's not uncommon amongst many members here this evening. And I can tell you personally, from my position, that's certainly greatly appreciated. And the facility here, as I said, is world class, and that's no doubt not just for fighting fires and combating fires, but the vast array of other emergency situations that the Rural Fire Service responds to. Serious motor vehicle accidents, search and rescue operations, community education, all those things that the lay person in the community may not be aware that the Rural Fire Service addresses or assists with. The volunteers essentially are the heart and soul of this organisation. And as I said, Mr Noble, 60 years. I'm sure there's many, if you accumulate all the wealth of experience in this room, it'd be centuries of experience in terms of fighting fires. You are the dedicated community members who place yourselves at harm's way for the benefit of the overall community, whether that be on the fire front, fighting fires in the heat of summer, in catastrophic conditions, or if you're standing on the middle of the road attending a major motor vehicle accident on an icy, wintry night where road conditions are very slippery and cars can be travelling at high speeds converging on an accident scene. I know, because I've seen it and I've experienced it. I can appreciate the difficulties, the challenges and the dangers that you experience whilst putting yourselves for positions that you're not being paid for the betterment of the whole community. You should be sincerely congratulated. But we also know that there's a psychological side that volunteers face. And as I said, from my experience in the police force, it's not much different. The psychological aspects of seeing traumatic incidents, from attending major motor vehicle accidents, which often in a country or regional rural community, you may know the person who's seriously injured or could be deceased in that car. It could be a relative, could be a neighbour, could be someone from an adjoining town. But they are the intricacies of living in a rural community and being involved in emergency services in rural communities. And sometimes having to deal with those problems and those traumatic things that you see is difficult. I know that. I remember as a young constable working in Sydney going to a house fire, and we responded. We just happened to be patrolling and we saw the smoke emanating from a housing commission flat in Macquarie Fields, and we were jolly on the scene, and the neighbours were there with their garden hoses trying to put out this flat that's engulfed in flames. And there was a lady outside, a Polynesian lady with about 4 or 5 young children, and she said, "My baby's upstairs." And me and my partner, we both tried to get into the unit. It was engulfed, the upper level was engulfed in flames, and unfortunately that poor baby that was upstairs, a 1-year-old child, died. And they are some of the things that, no doubt, as a police officer, I've had to deal with, and no doubt as emergency services and rural fire service brigade officers and volunteers, you've had to also encounter. So I sincerely congratulate you and sincerely applaud you on your professionalism and your commitment to serving the community above all others. In finally addressing, I'd like to thank everybody here for attending tonight. I look forward to seeing the presentation that will occur, and I look forward to listening to Mr Abbott later on this evening. But thank you once again, congratulations, and hope you have a safe and enjoyable trip home. Thank you.